up, say. One time for the hometown, I got love for it, it's real. Yeah. 2 times for the haters, man, cause I notice how this shit feel.
All right, guys, welcome to the
Mac
Report. As you can tell, we have a new studio. So today I'm really excited about our guest. This is Mr. Brian Baxter, so retired DPS Assistant Chief. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Nice. All right, so just remember, guys, the Mac Report, what we specialize in is telling extraordinary stories about extraordinary people. So that's someone who's overcome adversity in some way or done something extraordinary to either help themselves, to help other people, or to help the community. So let's jump into this. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be really cool, I think. Very
I think
relevant.
so. Thanks for having me.
Tell the audience just a little background about yourself. Let's start with like where you grew up, and then kind of get into your background with law enforcement.
Sure. I wasn't born in San Angelo, but I like to say we got here as soon as we could.
Yeah.
I joined DPS in 1993. Went through the academy, became a patrol trooper. And I was actually stationed at the state capitol in Austin, Texas for the beginning of my career, which was a great place to work. Lots of good stories, lots of good experiences.
Yes.
If you can imagine working downtown Austin in the early 90s,
awesome.
It was a great time.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Did that for several years, about 8 years, and then promoted to investigator and was assigned to San Angelo. And that's when my wife and I eventually moved out here and discovered, man, this is home. This is where we were meant to be. The next 20 years of my career involved a couple of moves, a couple more promotions, and we spent the last 8 years in the Austin area at headquarters, where I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to have the opportunity to serve Texas as the assistant chief of the training division.
Wow, yeah.
And retired this past, actually, we're a week away from my 1-year anniversary.
Is that right?
The 22nd of June was the last day in uniform.
Okay.
So we're getting close to a pretty significant anniversary. But anyway, over the years I told my wife, hey, I'm moving you to Corpus, to El Paso, to Eagle Pass, Del Rio, Austin, all over the place with my career. When I retire, you get to pick where we live. And she picked San Angelo.
She did?
She did.
I didn't know that.
So here we are.
Okay. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I you know what was going through my mind, though? Tell me what that was like, that last day in the uniform. What was that like?
It was phenomenal. It was
really?
It was better. I was sitting at my desk. It was a Friday.
Yeah.
And the next week was going to be, turning in stuff and turning off stuff and getting paperwork submitted and having a big celebration and being on my way out. But that Friday, I was still working, and I was actually still getting things done. And I was at my desk, and I thought, you know what, this is my last day I'm ever going to wear this uniform. I got to go into the gym right now where the recruits are.
Yeah.
And just see one, touch one, smell one, maximize this last opportunity that I've got. And so I did, and they were doing taser training.
Oh.
And the sergeant said, hey, Chief, do you want to say anything to the recruits? And I was like, I'm never going to miss a chance at a microphone. So, and I spoke real briefly.
Yeah.
Just told them to soak it in and absorb every second because it's going to be over before you know it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when I got done talking, a couple of them came up to me and they said, hey, we want you to sign something for us, but we don't have any paper. We're in the gym. Will you sign our taser cartridges?
Really?
And so it was kind of odd, but kind of cool at the same time. They lined up, and I got to sign recruits' taser cartridges.
Cool. Yeah,
that was what they were training with, and that was the significance of the day, and it kind of became significance to my career.
Yeah,
that was my last day in uniform, and I got to spend it with the brightest young brave recruits that we had.
Yeah, that is cool. So I wanted to ask you though, did you have to get tased? Is that true that you have to do that?
I never had to get tased.
Yeah.
Nobody has to get tased. It's a good thing to experience.
Is it?
It is.
Have you been tased?
I have.
What's it like?
It's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's complete immobilization, nervous system, muscular system shuts down. You have no control over it for a brief time.
Yeah.
And I was at a SWAT I was on the SWAT team for DPS for a number of years, and we had a competition at the Austin Police Headquarters. And one of the contests in between events was, hey, whoever's SWAT team can stand up the longest while they're being tased,
Oh, you're
gets
kidding.
this brand new, XP Zulu 9 or whatever the
Yeah.
brand new taser model
Okay.
was back then. And this was 1999, I think.
Yeah.
And so we got tased in that context.
Oh, dang.
Recruits do experience
That's what I thought.
the taser, but it's very controlled and it's voluntary and it's
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
One of the things the reason we're here is we're going to talk about the election, this particular election, but also, like we did at lunch, talk about the election process and how San Angelo, being the only city left in Texas that elects their police chief still, some of your thoughts on that. And I know you've been kind of vocal when it comes to that, and your belief is that it's not necessarily the best thing to be electing our police chief. There's a reason other cities don't do that. And it comes down to dogma, right? Isn't that aren't your thoughts along those lines?
I think a lot of things in law enforcement are sustained by dogma. And it's beneficial to step back and reevaluate things from time to time. Obviously, the way we've always done it, way of thinking is not the best way to continue to support a program. And I think that the election process in San Angelo is an example of that. Now, I also know that I'm the guy that just moved back here from Austin.
Yeah.
And so I might be viewed as that Californian moving to Texas trying to make things the way they were where I left. And man, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
What I offer and what I submit is evidence that the election process is not the best way to do this. We're blessed in San Angelo. We just had an election with really good quality candidates. I mean, the people that all three candidates that ran for chief of police, I told my wife as soon as I found out who they were, I was like, San Angelo wins no matter how this turns out. And absolutely, San Angelo wins with Travis Griffith. He's a great man, great leader, great cop, great friend. Yeah. And so we win. But it's bigger than the right now. And I think we need to be looking not at what suits San Angelo on June 15th of 2024. We need to be looking at what's going to suit San Angelo when it grows and when the department grows and when the city government grows and when the responsibilities and the population and all of the things that surround the duties of the police department grow.
That's right.
And to that end, I think having access to the best and the brightest across the nation would benefit San Angelo more than limiting our access to a candidate pool of people that work at San Angelo Police, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
You know, the way the criteria are written, I guess a sheriff's deputy that meets the qualifications could run and be elected. Doesn't have to be a San Angelo police officer, but it has to be someone who lives in the city limits.
Correct.
And so not only does that limit you from, say the Abilene assistant chief of police who has a lot of qualifications and a lot of experience and a lot of things to offer and a great vision, wants to be the chief of police in San Angelo. Well, they obviously can't.
Right.
But not only that, an assistant chief at the San Angelo Police Department with a lot of qualifications and a lot of experience and a lot of vision, who lives in Buffalo Heights, or who lives in Highland Range, or who lives somewhere outside of the city limits, cannot run for chief of the police department where they worked for decades.
Yeah. What do you say to people who say their argument is, the chief of police needs to be somebody who lives in San Angelo, who's been in San Angelo, that understands the city and what it's about and all the inner workings and has the relationships? What do you say to that, searching for someone outside of the city for chief?
I would validate those assertions. I would say those are very true things, but they're not the only things.
Okay.
I think if you look across the nation at how people hire a police chief, you're going to see a couple of things in common. One is, once they're hired, they have to establish a residence in that city.
Okay.
If you want to be taken seriously as the leader of a police department or a leader of a government agency in a city that represents that city, you need to live in that city. You need to be part of the community that you're sworn to serve.
Yes.
But I would say that doesn't have to be retroactive. You don't have to have been a part of that community. The police chief is not just a good cop, not just somebody that knows geographically where things are and who's who and has great relationships. A chief of police is the CEO of the police department. She is the chief executive officer of that organization. And if it were run like a business, you would often see a preference. If we could get somebody to run UPS in San Angelo, it would be great if we got somebody with the best qualifications that had lived in San Angelo. But that preference, I submit, would come secondary to having the best qualifications.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So if people argue, that the chief needs to be somebody who is even grown up here, has been really a part of the fabric of this city, you'd say that, yes, that's beneficial, but there are other things that supersede that are more important.
I would even say it's perhaps preferable.
Oh, wow.
Because it's a great thing. I mean, police are the public, and the public are the police. We look at Sir Robert Peel, and everything he said applies to our conversation. A police chief is a member of the department and also a member of the public that they're sworn to serve. So if they grew up here and have personal relationships, that's great. I come from an agency where years ago, if you were from San Angelo and you applied to the DPS, you would probably get stationed somewhere other than where you grew up, because there was a dogmatic, not evidence-supported opinion that, well, if Brian and Matt went to high school together and I pull you over for speeding, I might cut you a break because we're good old boys and we grew up together. That's not the case anymore. People are a company, an organization's greatest asset. That's why you look at business-wide, 85 to 90% of expenses are related to employees, are related to benefits and salaries and things like that. And that's a reflection of how important people are. So my former agency, among others, have recognized the value of keeping someone in the community where they grew up so that they can be part of that community, which is more important than to be able to regulate that community, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's talk, we'll get back kind of to this topic, but let's talk about the current election. And I want to hear some of your thoughts on this. So for me, I wrote an article last night that I published this morning, and I also talked about this on my little news show. But for me, the Griffith campaign was very well run. I feel like Travis Griffith was not necessarily an underdog, but by no means was he the favorite. Lieutenant Hernandez came in with a lot of support from the current administration, from the public, lots of endorsements, experience of running a campaign, doing this before, but also qualifications, higher ranking, you name it. A guy had it. But the Griffith campaign, to me, there were 4 strategies that they executed phenomenally well. And number one was their ground game. I feel like, right out of the gates, they did a really good grassroots type campaign with signs and with banners, with bracelets, with door knocking. I mean, you name it. And what he did essentially was he created these advocates that were going around town throughout the whole election process, winning votes for him, so that he not only was having to do it himself, but he had people winning votes for him. And then secondly, I feel like he did a really good job of controlling public perception. I feel like it was really smart. And I actually don't even think necessarily some of it was not even intentional. But, I mean, you could look into, you could overanalyze and say, oh, maybe that was a brilliant move, And what I mean by that was he never outright pointed to, let's say, Frank Carter and that there was, said that, oh, yeah, they're super corrupt, and anybody associated with Frank Carter, especially somebody he's endorsing, must be corrupt too. Never said anything like that. But he did say that the change needs to be made. And I think by adopting some of Chris Cimino's philosophies and what he was running on, which was internal affairs essentially, and cleaning up the department and the dismantling the good old boy system, when Cimino endorsed Griffith and the runoff started, I think he was able to take on that platform as his own as well. and gain those voters and supporters seamlessly. It kind of happened. So that was to me very important. And then also he created a movement, like a cause. People like to be part of movements. And it was that, if you will, the Barack Obama, yes, we can type deal. Not that they're similar in any way, just saying that
Sure.
it was a movement that people were like, wait, yeah, people that weren't even registered to vote yet. Yeah, there is corruption going on in the department. I want change too. And so it was something they wanted to be a part of, that their vote actually mattered. They saw that, in the regular election, that it was decided by they tied essentially, No one was the outright winner. So we saw this increase in registered voters during the runoff, which was very interesting. People that went out and got registered so they could go vote. And I don't think they were necessarily running to vote for Lieutenant Hernandez. I think that's how he won. So having said all of that, the Griffith campaign was really good. And so what are your thoughts on his campaign? What do you think allowed him to defeat Lieutenant Hernandez?
I'll start by saying, and I will answer the direct question.
Yeah, I know
but there was a mention when you were building up to this about he didn't say outright that there was corruption. He didn't say outright that this person was corrupt or that person is corrupt for endorsing this person. And I would say the reason he didn't say those things is because they're just probably patently not true. I want to out loud say that Frank Carter has served this city with pride and distinction and honor, and done a great job of running that police department. He picked it up in a very rough time.
Yep.
The cards were stacked against him when he took over, and he took that bull by the horns and he led it. And I think the reward for good work is generally more work.
Yeah.
And so you can tell that a chief is doing a good job when people are looking for things to try to make
That's
better, right? They're not in survival mode.
Uh-huh.
They're in growth mode. And you can't be in growth mode unless you feel secure. So as an outsider looking in, I first want to commend Frank Carter for his job as a police chief.
I want to be clear about that too. Yeah. I'm not in a way saying that. He's actually a friend of mine. I think he's done a great job.
Yeah,
so,
good man. And I hope I get to go fishing on his boat someday.
Yeah, me too.
But then I'll move on to actually answering the question. I think when it comes to campaigns, I am completely ignorant. I don't know anything about them. What I know about politics is limited to being a representative of a state agency sitting in on legislative affairs and meetings and councils.
Yeah.
But what I know about people and what I know about Travis Griffith is that I think what made him do such a good job in his campaign, and I'm not blowing out one candle to make another burn brighter. I'm just focusing on the one candle right now. What helped him do such a great job is the best way to convince people that you care is to actually care.
You said it.
And you don't have to try.
That's right.
You don't have to intentionally do things or script things or set up or frame things a certain way. When you actually care, it's apparent that you actually care. And I think Travis cares from the bottom of his feet all the way to the top of his head.
I do too.
Some of the things
I think Lieutenant Hernandez does too.
I guarantee, promise. So here's the difference in what I can say about those two, just personally, is I know Travis from running into him at events and seeing him with his team. And I remember being in the bullpen, the little street crimes bullpen with him and his team, Chris Choppa, some great people, and just shooting the breeze and having a great time with them. The way I know Mike Hernandez is going through doors.
That's right. I was going to say you work directly with him.
He and I have been through some very, very dangerous doors together, done some very big cases together, experienced some very exciting, some fun, some heartbreaking, some gut-wrenching experiences together. So when it comes to Mike Hernandez, we know each other.
That's right.
Travis Griffith and I know each other just in a different way.
Sure.
We never worked that closely together.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, you worked. You did probably some pretty scary stuff with him. I mean, were y'all on SWAT together?
Well, we were not on SWAT together.
On the same, maybe two agencies working together on the same.
Exactly.
Case.
When I left Austin and came to San Angelo, I was coming for a promotion. I was promoted to sergeant investigator.
Yeah.
And so I lost my position on the SWAT team to promote to come out here. And so I was fresh off the SWAT team, now in a narcotics unit, And I didn't know anybody out here. I didn't have any friends, didn't know any of the crooks, didn't know any of the friendlies. And I tell you, with that San Angelo Police Department took me in like a little brother. And Mike Hernandez among them took me in like a little brother. We worked together. He's a SWAT guy. I'm a SWAT guy. He was a SWAT commander at the time. And he invited me to come on a raid almost immediately after I got here. They were a man short, so he invited me to come along, and I came along and took my licks and my ribbon, and I felt like I was a part of that team moving forward.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you think that just the stuff I was kind of mentioning right there, a lot of this campaigning, the whole process, it divides the police department, doesn't it?
I believe it does.
Doesn't it decrease morale, and it's a lot of divisiveness and picking sides, and as you said, right after the election's over, it's time for healing, right? Yeah, and so is that one of the biggest reasons, do you think, also that it's time maybe for San Angelo to drop the election process and start appointing a chief?
I think it's one of two reasons that I claim. One is the accessibility to a deeper and broader candidate pool, and it would reduce the impact on not just the department, Matt, but on the city.
Good point. Good point.
We haven't known each other long, but now that I'm retired, I spend a little bit of time on social media.
Yeah.
And doing that, I've had such hate come at me in the comments from other citizens, from fellow citizens of San Angelo.
Yeah.
Either I must not love God enough because I'm not voting for this person, or it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to Travis and Mike's credit, I will say that they have both intentionally, outwardly, and very outspokenly denounced that kind of representation.
That's right.
Some of the worst damage that gets done to law enforcement as a profession is done by supporters. People who say things on behalf of law enforcement that are hateful, that are hurtful, that don't do anybody any good. They might think they're doing somebody some good, but they're really just making things worse.
Yes.
And we saw that recently with a comment somebody made on having to do with steaks being served for the police department. And man, I got to tell you, without a bat and an eye, Travis came on and didn't say anything bad about that person.
Right.
Just said, hey, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me. That's not what I believe. That's not what I'm about. That's not what this lunch was about.
Exactly.
And let's move forward and focus on voting tonight or whenever the vote was.
That's a good point, Brian. Is the citizens, the impact that it has, because that right there is a great example of that divisiveness and that hate you're talking about. It's like, that's not necessary. That's not what this is about.
And it's justified in my limited experience, the way it's explained to me. And believe me, I ask. Every time somebody says we need to elect the police chief,
right,
I respond with curiosity, not with criticism.
Yeah.
And I ask, please explain to me why that is.
I like that.
And
what do you get typically?
More often than not, I get the completely emotion-based explanation that, if the police chief isn't elected, the city council is going to have too much control over them. And so let's dig into that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean that the city council is going to have too much control?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to run the police department the way they want, not the way the chief wants. Well, that's how government works. Government agencies work the way the government want them to work.
Right. Otherwise, it's
in
a dictatorship.
service of the people.
Yeah.
And so, again, help me understand.
So then, what do they say?
What this looks like,
Yeah.
and then I offer something like, the fire chief isn't elected.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they say, and look at how they run the fire department. And I've yet to get an evidence-based or anything beyond some kind of just
anecdotal
explanation.
Yeah.
And so I've yet to hear anything compelling to explain why we don't want, and it would actually be a city manager that would have oversight over a police chief.
Oh,
just
really?
Like a city manager has oversight over fire chief.
Yeah, exactly.
And to hire them, you wouldn't just say, hey, city manager, go hire a police chief.
Yeah.
What cities do...
explain this.
Burleson is hiring police officers right now, but when you look at the Metroplex, the Colony is hiring a police chief, and it's right next door to a classmate of mine who left DPS and became a police chief up in the Metroplex.
Yeah.
Waco PD just hired a new police chief. Georgetown hired a new police chief. Now, Georgetown happened to select a candidate from within the Georgetown Police Department, happened to be an existing assistant chief of the department.
Cool.
So it's kind of a illustration of how that can work.
Right.
But what they do is they create a search committee, whether in the form of a recruiting firm, a consultant firm. They put together a search committee of qualified people who know what to look for.
Nice.
They establish criteria. You got to have a command college, FBI National Academy, Northwestern, some kind of leadership academy.
What
under
about
your
ranking?
belt.
I'm probably jumping the gun, but
you have to
be a lieutenant.
For example, I think the colony is asking for a second in command of a city department. So they don't want somebody who spent 30 years working for DPS. Because state government is different than city government.
Okay.
They want somebody that can run a city police department. And they set very specific criteria, either this much college or this many years experience, something to meet that threshold. But they set very high expectations. And when you set high expectations, just ask the Marine Corps, you get quality candidates.
That's right.
You'll have a couple that try to fake it till they make it and throw their name in the hat just for friends.
But they'll get weeded out.
They'll get weeded out, and the people who rise to the top are going to be the people that are attracted to that job with the high qualifications.
That's right.
And,
Can't argue with
so
that.
I've yet to hear a compelling argument about why we need an elected chief, but I continue to see reasons, evidence-based reasons, why we should heavily consider moving to an appointed chief.
I gotta agree with you.
And the morale is a huge part of it.
It is. Yeah.
I've been here as a police officer through a couple of elections. Never experienced it from the inside. That's got to be just gut-wrenching.
I know. I can't imagine.
But I've seen it happen to the department, and I've seen it happen to the city.
Yeah.
And the way you fix that is you elect the person that leads the hiring committee to hire the chief. You hold town hall meetings.
Okay.
The city gets to come in, the citizens get to come in and listen to these candidates.
That's good.
Your hiring committee puts together, everybody in this room is now a police chief candidate. We're all going to have just like we did for the voters, we're going to have town hall meetings. We're going to have open mic night so that people can ask questions and get answers. And then the ultimate decision comes down to the city and the hiring committee.
Okay.
But the people have had buy-in. And the city gets to listen to what's important. And the division then happens at the elected official level, the mayor, the city council, not at the police chief level.
Let's talk about the number of people that came out to vote. So I think it was something like just under 60,000 San Angelo citizens were registered to vote, 56, something like that. But of those, what would you say it was like 5% or something?
My understanding is it was about 5,000.
About 5,000
people showed up to vote, a little bit more.
What's up with that?
You're looking at 5% of the population of San Angelo.
Right.
Of course, the toddlers aren't going to vote.
Yeah.
So when you look at the 60,000 registered voters, we're just under 10% of people coming out for a topic that's so. When you ask the right person, it's so important that we have an elected chief.
I know.
It's so important that 5,000 of us are going to show up.
Yeah.
So it's not something that people are passionate about. It's something that people have been allowed access to only one half of the argument. I don't think, in my limited experience of what I've seen the city do in preparation for a vote on whether or not we're going to have an elected chief, it's, hey, we'd like to have an appointed chief, period. There's no explanation. There's no, this is what the rest of the state does. In a state of around 800 municipal police departments. Now, we've got way more police organizations in Texas than 800.
Okay.
But about 800 of them are municipal police departments. One has an elected chief.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a red flag, is it not? That's an indicator that perhaps, if everyone else in the world is crazy and we're the only one that's sane, maybe we need to back up and pragmatically take a look at this and give it a chance and ask the right questions to the right people. And I'm not the right people on all these questions, but I'm going to seek them out and try to find the answers to my questions. Because my gut is telling me, and again, I try to respond with curiosity instead of criticism.
Yeah.
But everything about what I'm hearing and reading and seeing is that this elected chief, we're hanging on to it just for the sake of hanging on to it, and it's doing damage.
It's doing damage. That's right. Kind of what is behind this is it's always the way that we've done things, and we're gonna keep doing the things the way we've always done them, and it's that dogmatic approach to the issue that's like preventing people from. Well, what I like is that you ask questions when people talk about, oh, we have an elected chief and there's a reason we do it that way. I like that your first thing out of your mouth is a question, which is, what do you usually say?
I ask them why.
Yeah, why?
What is
usually
it?
An emotional response.
What supports the need for an elected chief over an appointed chief? And with people in general, but particularly law enforcement officers, there's two things, and only two things, that we don't like. And that's the way things are and any kind of change.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we're good.
Yeah.
And I think we see that a lot in the discussions that go on about this. Loved ones of mine, close friends of mine, people that are 11 times smarter than I'll ever be. When I have this conversation with them, they say, well, the city's going to have too much control. Well,
so is that what it comes down to for most people?
Which I ask them to explain what that looks like and how that is, and there's no follow-up. The other day I was told, you wouldn't listen to facts if they slapped you in the face. And I'm like, no, please slap me in the face with a fact. I've been waiting for a fact this whole time, and I've yet to hear one. There's a lot of emotionally driven...
Well, the problem then, here's what stinks about that, is that even if you present some of the fact-based evidence and point to examples of cities who are doing this and are successful and all the reasons why this is probably holding us back, you have people that refuse to listen to that. They're not logical about it. And so what I'm wondering is, how do you convince people then that, look, we got to let go of this? Like, this is a good thing to appoint the police chief. Like, I wonder how that happens. In conversations like this, I hope, but what else?
I think making it available, making it talked about.
Yeah.
And it just isn't talked about.
That's right.
Other than to immediately dismiss it.
Yeah.
Some of the people that I talk to inside the police department want an appointed police chief.
Yeah.
Because there was the claim that we need to make some change. And I didn't work for San Angelo Police for the last several years, so I can't testify to what this change is or isn't.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that I've heard a lot of people say, we need change, we need change. Well, if you really want change, let's get somebody with vision beyond the city limit view of San Angelo, Texas.
Yep.
Or the person within the city limits of San Angelo, Texas with the best view. A quarterback has to be able to read the defense, has to know where his receivers are, has to know what the snap count is. They have to know all of those things. They don't just have to be good at catching a ball or throwing a ball or taking a snap. They have to be good at all of those things. What I'll tell you about, we've passed the election. We're at a point now where we have a chief-elect.
Yeah.
What I can tell you about Travis Griffith is that he can assimilate to that.
Yeah.
He's a smart enough guy that he'll walk in there and he'll get knocked around a little bit for the first while because he's not had this experience with this board, or he's not had these budgetary meetings, or he's not familiar with these procurement rules, or he's not up to speed with these other things that need to happen in a certain way. But he'll figure those things out, and he'll do a phenomenal job at all of them.
I think so too. Yeah.
But what if we could hire somebody that could walk in, and we didn't have to pay them to learn the job?
Yeah.
We could just pay them to do the job.
That's right. Yeah.
And it might still be Travis. Travis might still be the guy that comes out on top.
Yeah.
But he might not.
Yeah.
And we might be able to just have somebody come in, hit the ground running, take their leadership philosophy, apply it to this agency, listen to the department, listen to the people, and just really hit the ground running.
Yes. So what makes a good leader to you? What do you think?
I think being a good leader is a lifestyle. It's not so much a skill set.
Okay.
And one thing I would repeat is the best way to convince someone you care is to actually care. You have to care about the people you lead. You have to care about the people who the people you lead serve.
Yeah. Good.
Deeply.
Very good.
Deeply. You have to You know, I worked briefly for a cell phone company, and one of their sales lines is to ask public safety leaders, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
And I told them, don't ask that, because I'll tell you what doesn't keep a public safety leader up at night is cell phones. It's people.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
shootings. It's crashes. It's
you bet.
illnesses and injuries and fires and you name it. It's a bunch of very, very important things done by an existential agency. And so what makes a good leader is someone who makes their people's needs their own needs. If I make your needs my own needs, I don't have to ask you, hey, what can I do for you today? I know that I want you to feel safe. You know, we talk a lot about being safe and crime being down and numbers. A very important factor that we don't talk about very often is people feeling safe. I need the people of my city to feel safe.
Yeah.
And because I need that, I'm going to do the things that I know I need to do to make them feel safe. I need the crime to come down in my city. And we're hearing a lot of strategies and a lot of good goals and visions about crime reduction. That's exciting stuff.
It is.
And so I think a good leader internalizes the needs of the people that they serve.
It takes them on as their own.
And a police department is a service agency, a public service agency. A police chief is a servant leader. A police chief, you know, Mike Hernandez said this best at a town hall that they had that the NAACP ran at the library. He said he wants to take the organizational chart and flip it upside down so that when people look at the police department, they see the chief at the bottom serving all the way to the top. And at the very top is the frontline officer.
Wow.
That's the kind of visibility and thought process that goes into being a good leader.
Yes. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good answer.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
That's
I liked
cool.
it so
I like
much,
that.
I'm going to make it my own.
Yeah, I like that. So, do you think another news outlet mentioned this, but do you think Lieutenant Mike Hernandez will leave San Angelo?
I don't have any idea, but I sure hope not.
I know. I hope
because
not.
when it comes to healing, which is what needs to happen now, like the first 100 days is what people are fixing to be focused on. Man, we need to be focused on the first 100 minutes. We need to be 25-meter target is healing. 50-meter target is crime reduction, feeling safe, meeting the needs of the citizens.
Yeah.
But the 25-meter target, the right now target, is getting everybody back together. And you never know what that's going to look like, but hopefully, to benefit San Angelo and everybody that lives here, hopefully that means Mike Hernandez staying here and continuing to lead.
Yes, I hope so. So how do we heal? How does the police department heal and the citizens? I mean, what do you do? How do you do it? It's directly proportional to the amount of damage done. The answer to that question. Absolutely.
And I saw a lot of damage done. You know, the guys took a pledge at the beginning of this thing and said, we're not gonna do what we've done in the past or what candidates have done in the past. We're gonna have this a gentleman's contest, and not because of the contestants, but because of the supporters. It got nasty, and I mean it got super nasty.
It did.
And we had people twisting words and taking sentences that were said and replacing them with sentences that weren't said. And we had false dichotomies and false equivalencies and all sorts of just horrible argument that could have been replaced with adult back and forth, asking and answering and helping everyone get a broader view of the big picture. So I say all that to say the healing is going to be drawn out, I think. I think it's going to be a long time coming. But because it was done mostly by supporters, I think the leaders can step in and make it happen.
I hope so,
And I think whoever takes the initiative to make this happen, it will probably be the chief-elect, needs to get everybody in a room. If you're a sergeant or above in a room, and we need to make a deal right now. You either get on this train or you're getting run over.
That's right.
Not in the sense of follow me, I'm the new chief, but in the sense of serve these people. They're the citizens of San Angelo. You're either on that train or you're getting run over. And that means leave all your opinions about the election, leave all your opinions about who should have won.
That's right.
At the door. We're moving forward.
Got to move forward. That's what I was imagining and that I was hoping would happen was that Travis Griffith, gets them all together, like leadership all together, and says, hey, look, this is the past. This was what it was. It was a campaign. Things got ugly. But it's time to move forward. We all have to be on the same page, marching in the same direction, because you're right, it's going to start there.
Yeah.
It has to. And so describe briefly, if what does a typical day look like in the first 100 days for a chief? What is he going to be doing?
I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot of steps involved. There's a new police chief training that he'll attend, cool. Which is fantastic.
Cool.
There's a lot of meetings he's going to attend, and there's going to be a handoff of, this was this person's duty, now this is your duty. There's going to be a lot of intentional steps, hopefully, to set him up for the greatest success.
Okay.
I don't know for the San Angelo Police Department what the first 100 days specifically are going to look like, but they're going to involve a lot of getting into this new position and learning what it means on a daily basis.
Exactly.
And several years ago during an election, there was one of the guys that said, I'm going to be a working chief. I'm going to be out there in a patrol car writing tickets and working crashes.
Yeah.
And I think what Chief Griffith is about to realize is, and he's not the one that said it.
Okay. Yeah.
But he's going to know without a doubt, you're not going to have time for that.
Wow.
In a city of 100,000 people, in a department that size with a budget that big, we need the chief being a chief. And some agencies are small enough that the chief is he's in a patrol car writing tickets, arresting people, directing traffic, that kind of thing. But in a city police department this size, people think, Austin's big city, San Angelo's a little town. It's 100,000 people. This is a real city.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
The majority of police departments in Texas have fewer than 10 officers.
Wow.
And look at what we have here.
That's right.
We're butting right up on 200.
That's right.
So I think what he's going to realize is it's a big job, and I 100% believe he's cut out for, that he can assimilate to the things that he's not comfortable with right now. Yeah. And hopefully the first 100 days are just him getting more and more comfortable serving the people who serve San Angelo.
Do you think it'd be awkward for Lieutenant Hernandez, coming under his leadership? And I always wonder about that. Or even other officers or other lieutenants, do you think it's awkward at all at first? Like, oh man, this sergeant now is running the ship, or who knows?
I can't imagine that it's not going to be awkward.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
So I'll tell you a story. I'll answer that question with a story.
Yeah, all right.
When I was probably 23 years old, I was a corporal in DPS, and I was a corporal in an area with a sergeant vacancy, meaning they're fixing to hire a sergeant to fill that job.
Yeah.
Me, I'm 24. I know everything about everything. Just ask me.
Yeah.
I competed. I did well on the test. I did well on the interview. But I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
I barely had business with a badge and a gun, much less stripes on my sleeve.
Right.
So the board made the wise decision to promote someone else.
Okay.
And that person is now a chief at DPS, and he's a phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
I would say he saved my career, because
Wow.
the first night that he came into the office, I had been writing the schedule. I'd been coordinating and leading that shift for several weeks. He came into work, and he politely asked me, "Hey, Brian, why don't, after lunch tonight, we sit down and you show me how you've been building the schedule?" He's obviously trying to include me, trying to get my buy-in. He's trying to not change things unnecessarily. He's doing all the right things.
Sure, yeah.
My response was all the wrong things.
What did you do?
I said, "You're so much more qualified for me, obviously. I bet you can figure it out on your own."
God, yeah. Yeah.
And he said,
man.
"Brian, you need to go home.
Oh, dang.
Take the night off.
Really?
Come back when you get your mind right." He said, "You got 24 hours to get this out of your system." And all the way home, I'm kicking myself and punching my...
Yeah.
Why did I do... I'm such a child. I can't...
Yeah.
But it was too late. I'd already said it.
Dang.
And
That's interesting.
in my defense, my frontal lobe was not completely developed.
Exactly, yeah. Dang.
But I tell that story because it is awkward.
Yeah.
Here's a guy you were just in competition with.
Right.
I'm doing the job right now, and now you're my supervisor.
Right. That's weird,
And
man.
the difference between Mike Hernandez in 2024 and Brian Baxter in 1995 or 6, whatever year that was, is that he's a very mature, very seasoned, very respectable, honorable leader of people.
Yeah.
And he's earned his position. He's earned where he is. He's earned his stripes, so to speak. And there's no amount of awkwardness that's going to change that.
That's right. Him. Exactly. He'll handle it just fine.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I want to know more about kind of some stuff that you've done. So you've worked narcotics. You've worked SWAT. Tell me, what else have you done? Narcotics, SWAT. You've done obviously patrol. You're a detective.
I as an investigator, I worked narcotics for the majority of my time.
Nice.
Toward the end, we in law enforcement, some of us, started seeing kind of the truth behind the curtain of human trafficking. What had been dismissed as prostitution for years, in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases was actually human trafficking.
Wow.
And so I was part of a group of folks that I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm bragging on myself. This group of people was very forward thinking in writing strategies and SOPs and policies and building goals and strategies to attack human trafficking the best way that law enforcement can. From covert operations to overt operations, long-term conspiracy investigations, wiretaps, undercover work, you name it, we employed it to try to attack human trafficking. That was a big piece of what I did as a first-line supervisor. I was able to influence a few teams to really make that a priority.
Whoa.
You know, when what's measured becomes treasured. And if you're not counting the number of human trafficking cases you're working, your people are not going to work human trafficking cases. If you're only counting dope cases and dope seizures, they're only going to make dope cases and dope seizures. So I like to think that I was part of the group that gave that momentum and kind of got that off the ground, at least in my little circle of influence.
No, yeah. Well, here's what I heard. I've heard this a few times, and tell me if I'm wrong. But I've heard that human trafficking is a pretty big deal around San Angelo. Like that's going on. That's true?
It's absolutely going on.
It's a problem. Yeah.
It's going on, and it is a big deal. It's a ginormous deal, and it's not just sex trafficking.
Wow.
It's labor trafficking. People that are forced to work for no or extremely low wages, or they're promised you'll get a paycheck on Friday. Oh, not going to pay it till next Friday. That's that type of coercion or force or fraud that meets the definition of human trafficking, whether for labor or sex trafficking. The difference is when you got a person that's under 18 years old, you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. You just have to prove that they're under 18 years old and they're in this situation doing these things.
I see, yeah. So have you exposed legitimate sex trafficking rings? I mean, have there been investigations of like, conspiracy of multiple people involved?
Absolutely, in a number of different ways. One of the most common ways is to show someone's propensity. So I'll back up and I'll tell you, in my opinion, the best way to attack sex trafficking anyway, sexual exploitation in general, and a friend of mine have a nonprofit that's devoted to changing the male behaviors that contribute to the demand for sexual exploitation. But the best way to attack it is by attacking the demand. When it comes to sex trafficking, the demand is people who want to buy sex.
That's right.
They want to buy human beings for sex.
Correct.
If we could get rid of everyone that buys cocaine, nobody would sell cocaine anymore because there wouldn't be a market for it.
Right.
So I tell people that we can't arrest enough pimps to end sex trafficking.
That's right, yeah.
And unfortunately, the NGOs and nonprofits can't rescue and provide services to enough victims to end sex trafficking.
Yeah.
The only single discipline that could end sex trafficking is demand reduction.
Really? Yeah.
If we got rid of the demand, and that means the police make arrests for it, that means that we provide services for people with addictions, that doesn't mean we forgive and forget.
Right.
But we provide services for the good of
Yeah.
society.
Right.
And that men like you and me hold each other accountable. When you start talking about, hey, let's go to the strip club, they're having a special tonight and it's a great time, I don't need to just tell you, I don't like those places. What I need to say to you is, no, I don't want to go to that place, Matt, and I'm surprised that you do, man. I thought more of you than that. You know, you seem to be a guy that respects people and respects their values and their space. And in those places, here's what happens. People are exploited for money. People are sexually assaulted. And just go down the list. Take away your anonymity so that then you're like, hey, back off, dude. I didn't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I changed my ways. And then you do that to the next guy.
Man, that's good.
When men hold each other accountable,
Yes.
magical things can happen. And I'll tell you,
Wow.
there's no better advocate for ending sexual exploitation than a person who used to represent the demand for it.
Oh, man.
Think
isn't that
about
the
it.
Truth? Yes.
Think about smokers.
Oh, you bet.
When you quit smoking, who talks about?
That's exactly right.
Nobody talks more
People
about not
who've been
smoking than
through
people
it.
who
Yeah.
just stop smoking.
That's right.
People that just start CrossFit. What they talk about
Yep.
CrossFit all the time.
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing. When you reach that level of what I would call self-actualization, when you
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable
That's good.
to treating other people with respect at that basic level,
Yeah.
you want other people to know, hey, I don't do that anymore. I might have done it before,
Yeah.
but having done it doesn't preclude forbidding it.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow. So are there are there active investigations that are ongoing like all the time in the Concho Valley? I mean,
Yeah, a lot of agencies do it. The city does it, the
Yeah.
county does it, state does it, feds do it. They've got different access to different layers
Yeah.
of the problem,
Right.
and they all attack it the best way they know how. And that's one of those jobs that you don't have to look for people to fill those slots.
Oh,
when
yeah, I
you,
bet.
when you say, hey,
Yeah.
we've got an opening in a human trafficking squad in Lufkin.
Yeah.
We've got, in DPS, we've got agents that will transfer from Amarillo to Lufkin
Wow.
to fill that spot
Yeah.
because they want
to
do that work.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would too.
But yeah, absolutely. There's cases going on
Yeah.
all over the nation right now, all over the world.
It's people don't really realize the extent of it. They don't. I know I didn't. I mean, I still probably don't know the full extent of it. But that's for another podcast. I'd love to talk more about that another time. But lastly, what do you feel can be done? What can we do other than conversations like this to help the public move toward appointing a police chief instead of electing one? How can we educate people and get them on board?
I would say start by asking questions. All of us asking questions. When we're having those and it's probably not the top conversation at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about the election?
Yeah.
But when it does come up, instead of just letting it be topical and instead of just letting it come in and go out,
Yeah.
ask questions and try to become as educated as you can about the position and the interests of the person that you're talking with.
Okay. Yeah.
We tend to get very positional about this.
Yes.
I want an elected chief. I want an appointed chief. That's where we stop. It's kind of like, I like guns. I hate guns.
Yeah.
I'm a Ford guy. I'm a Chevy guy.
Yeah.
Instead, we ought to be saying, what is it about an appointed chief that you don't like?
Right.
What is it about an elected chief specifically that you do like?
Yeah.
And ask those questions and have those conversations. And then when we learn something, be able to tell a person, wow, I didn't know that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. And then when I have a conversation with someone else, I share that as well.
Yeah.
And then, I don't want to call it conventional wisdom, but the collective wisdom is going to be properly informed.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of people who are passionate.
Uh-huh.
And from the bottom of my heart, I wish that they were as informed as they are
I
passionate.
love that when you said that at lunch the other day.
Yeah.
I love that. That's good. Yeah, I do too. And so this last question, I promise, but what is the process for doing that, to getting away from the election process and appointing a chief? What has to be done? What has to happen? So
it's a government function. It's going to be a bullet on an election ballot. So you have to have a sponsor. You have to have somebody who internalizes the need for this.
Yeah.
And basically campaign for it like you would anything else.
Okay.
It's a topic for town hall discussions. It should be a topic for every single candidate for city council.
Yeah.
It should be a topic for the mayor. It should be a topic for new press conferences, and it's a huge thing. And I think we're keeping it small.
Yeah, that's the
because
problem.
we don't want to get into the messiness of what we don't know. But we just need to let it be as big as it needs to be.
Exactly.
And if it's gonna be on a ballot like it has been before, then it needs to get the exposure that it deserves, and that is going to require somebody intentionally sharing information at every opportunity.
That's right. Yeah. And lastly, tell me just real quick 3 things that you're grateful for right now in your life.
Man, first and foremost, I'm grateful for God and His blessings on my family and myself. We never in my life did I think that at 50 years old I'd be retired assistant chief from DPS, living in a beautiful house with my beautiful wife, and we've got one beautiful child still at home. My oldest son, my middle daughter, they're both successful and doing great things. So I'm very grateful to God for that family blessing. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have served Texas for as long as I got to, and in as many ways as I got to. And finally I'm grateful to look forward to what happens next. I'm excited. I've got a new business venture. I've got some opportunities to learn more and do more and be more, and so I'm grateful for those opportunities.
That's awesome. That's really good. Awesome. Thank you, Brian Baxter. I really appreciate it. This was awesome. All right, guys, that's it for the Matt Contreras Report. We appreciate you stopping by to check it out. We'll see you next time for a little bit more. You take care.
What I'm saying.
Cool.
One time for the hometown, I got love for it, it's real. 2 times for the haters, man, cause I notice how this shit feel. 3 times for my family, dog, cause this shit done paid our bills. And I get 4 times my net worth from a year ago with no deals. Did it all.